In the corner of a dusty archive in Seattle, there is a photograph from 1968. It's not of a plane, but of a group of men and women standing in a literal mud pit. They look exhausted, covered in grime, but they are smiling like they've just won the lottery. These were the Incredibles. They had just built the first Boeing 774, the Queen of the Skies, in less than 16 months. At the time, they didn't have a factory big enough to hold it, so they built the factory around the plane while they were assembling it. Now, fast forward to early 2024, an Alaska Airlines flight is climbing through 16,000 feet when a door plug, a solid piece of the fuselage, simply decides to leave the aircraft. It blows out with the force of a bomb, leaving a gaping hole in the side of a brand new 737 MAX. Between that mud-caked 196H smile and that 2024 hole in the sky lies the greatest industrial tragedy in American history. It is a story of how a company that was once a church of engineering was converted into a casino of finance. And today, in April 2006, as NASA officially classifies Boeing's Starliner mission as a Type A mishap, the same level of severity as the Challenger disaster, we have to ask, how did the world's most trusted wings lose their soul? To understand the collapse, you first have to understand the height from which they fell. For 80 years, Boeing wasn't just a company, it was a priesthood. If you worked at Boeing in the 1950s or 60s, you weren't just an employee, you were part of a culture where the CEO was an engineer, the board of directors were engineers, and the person sweeping the floor knew that if a single rivet wasn't flush, a pilot's life was at risk. When they built the 707, they bet the entire company on it. When they built the 774, they did it again. They were Incredibles because they prioritized the physics over the spreadsheets. At the time, Boeing's Seattle headquarters was a place where safety wasn't a PR buzzword. It was the atmosphere. Engineers were allowed to tell managers no. In fact, they were expected to. If a design wasn't perfect, the plane didn't fly. Period. This engineering-first culture created a level of public trust that is almost impossible to imagine today. People used to say, "If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going." That wasn't a marketing slogan. It was a statement of fact. You got on a Boeing because you knew that somewhere in Seattle, a group of obsessive, caffeine-fueled nerds had checked every bolt 3 times. But in 1997, the church opened its doors to a stranger. And that stranger brought a calculator. In 1997, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas. On paper, it looked like a standard corporate consolidation. But in reality, it was a reverse takeover. The executives from McDonnell Douglas, led by Harry Stonecipher, took over the leadership of Boeing. Stonecipher famously said, "When people say I changed the culture of Boeing, that was the intent, so that it's run like a business rather than a great engineering firm." That sentence is the original sin. Suddenly, the Church of Engineering was under new management. The headquarters was moved from Seattle, where the planes were built, to Chicago, 2,000 miles away. Why? So the executives wouldn't be distracted by the engineers. They wanted to be closer to the Wall Street analysts and the big banks. The focus shifted. It was no longer about what is the best plane we can build. It was, how do we drive the stock price up? They began a process called shareholder primacy. They spent billions of dollars on stock buybacks, money that should have gone into researching the next generation of aircraft, to make the stock look more attractive to investors. For a while, it worked. The stock price soared. The executives got massive bonuses. But on the factory floor, the nerds were being told to hurry up. The culture of no was replaced by the culture of schedule. The engineers warned that you can't rush physics. The accountants replied that you can't miss a quarterly earnings report. And then came the Airbus A320neo. In the early 2010s, Boeing's rival Airbus announced a new, more fuel-efficient plane. Boeing was caught flat-footed. They didn't have a new plane ready. To save time and money, they decided to Frankenstein their 50-year-old workhorse, the 737. They would slap bigger, more efficient engines on the old frame and call it the 737 MAX. But there was a problem. The engines were so big they didn't fit under the wings. They had to be moved forward and upward. This changed the plane's aerodynamics, making it prone to pitching its nose up and stalling. Instead of redesigning the airframe, which would be expensive, they fixed it with software. They called it MCAS. And here is where the reputation truly began to crumble. They didn't tell the pilots. They didn't want pilots to have to undergo expensive simulator training for the new MAX because that would make the plane more expensive for airlines to buy. So they buried the existence of MCAS in the fine print. In 2018, Lion Air Flight 600 plunged into the Java Sea. In 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed shortly after takeoff. 336 people died because a software system they didn't know existed fought them for control of the plane, based on a single faulty sensor. When the world grounded the MAX, Boeing didn't immediately apologize. They pointed fingers at pilot error in developing nations. It was a defense that felt arrogant, defensive, and, to many, borderline racist. The trust was gone, but the nightmare was just beginning. You would think 2 fatal crashes would be the rock bottom. It wasn't. Once the door was kicked open, the rot was visible everywhere. Whistleblowers like John Barnett began to speak out about trash being left in the fuel tanks of 787 Dreamliners. They spoke of speed over safety and workers being pressured to sign off on inspections they hadn't actually done. Barnett, tragically, was found dead earlier in this decade while in the middle of a legal battle with the company. Then came the Alaska Airlines door plug in 2024. An investigation revealed that the bolts meant to hold the plug in place were simply missing. They had been removed for repair and never put back. This wasn't a design flaw, it was a fundamental breakdown in the ability to turn a wrench correctly. Even Boeing's space division wasn't safe. The Starliner spacecraft, meant to be Boeing's answer to SpaceX, became a symbol of national embarrassment. In 2024, it left astronauts stranded on the International Space Station because its thrusters failed. Which brings us to the present, early 2026. NASA has officially classified that Starliner mission as a Type A mishap. In NASA speak, that means the spacecraft suffered more than $2.5 million in damage or posed a lethal risk. It is the highest level of failure. The Boeing 777X, the next great hope, is years behind schedule. The 737 MAX production lines are being hovered over by FAA inspectors like hawks. Boeing has become a cautionary tale taught in business schools. It is the story of what happens when you treat a high-stakes engineering firm like a fast food franchise. In late 2020, is